Hello, hello, hello. What's up, my dudes? So, the first time that I recorded this, I didn't realize how close I was to the microphone, so it kept, picking up a bunch of, the movements I was making or whatever, and it sounded, really terrible. So, I'm gonna try recording this again. But I don't have a script for this, so this is sort of just gonna be, thoughts off the top of my head. But I've been requested a couple of times to try out the free art program Krita. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm just gonna pronounce it like that for the entirety of this video, just to make it easy on you. So this is the first time that I've ever used this program. I'd never even opened this, I just downloaded this program the day of when I recorded this. So basically any of the figuring out kind of things that I had to do throughout my process with this, it was all done in the course of this video. So you may see a couple of things that I'm gonna mention later going on. But so yeah, this is basically a first impressions kind of thing. So no prior experience. But for the drawing itself, I drew the Mexican revolutionary leader, Emiliano Zapata, because you know me with my history stuff, and whenever I try out a new medium or program or whatever, like I mentioned in my last video, I like to use a reference just so I can focus more so on the medium itself rather than the subject matter, and I don't feel too pressured to make it amazing because I'm oh, it's just a study or whatever. So yeah, I was just really drawn him because history, and also I share a birthday with him, so I feel a bit of connection on that level as well, if you know what I'm saying. And our shared birthday is August 8th, if you're wondering, so not super soon, but kind of soon-ish. But anyway, on to the topic itself. Just in the past year or whatever, I've been using Photoshop for my digital art and everything. So the layout of Krita is, obviously on the outside it looks pretty similar, because most drawing programs do, I feel, sort of take from Photoshop in their setup and everything. So it looks pretty similar, when you're just sort of looking at it. But there were a couple of things that were throwing me off, just very niche things, I guess. But the first thing was, the color picker, because in Photoshop, it's sort of set up default as, the rectangle with all the values and stuff and, the saturation. And then there's, a tiny bar that has the hues. But with Krita, I changed it to the closest that there was to the Photoshop setting. But in Krita, I think that the default is the triangle shaped color picker with the values and saturation in the center, and then the hues are in the circle around it. But I tend to having the larger selection, I guess, being focused on the values and saturation and everything, because that tends to be, I guess, what I focus on the most, just with the type of painting I do and everything. So I ended up switching the color picker to be a bit closer to the one in Photoshop. And then also the shortcut keys in Krita are different than the ones in Photoshop. So the one in particular that I can think of that I had to switch over, there were several that I had to switch over in order to make it closer to my workflow or whatever. But the shortcut key for the color, the color selection in Photoshop is the letter I, and in Krita, it's when you're in the brush setting, you hold down the control button and then you click to choose whatever color you want. And I think that the I either refers to the opacity or the brightness of the color. I'm forgetting which one it was, but I kept hitting the I button in order to like select the color, and I wasn't noticing that like the opacity or whatever was changing. So then I'd be like, hey, why is this not working as well as it was before? And then I realized that's sort of like what it was doing. So I went in and I changed like the shortcut for that, and that's one thing that I'm also pretty happy with, is that it's relatively easy to change the shortcuts in the program. So that's one plus. But I had to do that a couple times just because my workflow is a bit different than how it's like set up in this program or whatever. And another thing that I really like is like the brush selection, like the default brush selection that they have, because they have a pretty good variety of brushes that you can choose from. And the one that I was using the whole time that I was doing this, basically, like I didn't really switch out brushes because I really liked the one that I was using, is the dry bristles brush. Yeah, that's what it's called. But if you really do enjoy using like digital art, in order to do like painting and that sort of stuff like I do, you're really gonna like the brush selection that they have, because when I used GIMP, like in the past, the brushes that they have were sort of like your default circle brush and your airbrush tool and that sort of stuff, and then they had like a bunch of weird brushes. But here they have a lot of brushes that are more suited towards like drawing mediums and that sort of thing. So I definitely say that Krita sort of has GIMP beat as a free art program in regards to that. And I mean, I think that Krita is more suited to be a drawing program than GIMP is, because GIMP is generally like supposed to be a photo editing program, from what I can tell. Like that's sort of how they market themselves. But Krita is a bit more geared as like a drawing program. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're looking for like free programs or whatever. And I'm not really sure about how Krita does in regards to like line art and stuff, because obviously you can tell from this that I don't really do line art that much. So someone else who's used the program who actually does line art might have a better opinion on that. But just from what I was able to tell with like the pen pressure and stuff, it does work pretty well in recognizing your pen pressure and like smoothly going through it or whatever. But that's sort of like one thing that I noticed like in comparison to it versus GIMP, is that I tried downloading GIMP like before I tried out Krita, because I was just like, oh, I'll do another video on GIMP. But I guess like with the type of pen that I have, because I've gotten like a new laptop and everything since like my videos when I did use GIMP, because that laptop was getting kind of old and slow. But when I downloaded GIMP, it wasn't recognizing my pen as like separate from the mouse, so it wasn't picking up the pen pressure. And I guess it's because like the computer that I have now that I got for college is like a touchscreen computer, so the pen was meant for the touchscreen and everything. And I don't know if GIMP really is only able to acknowledge like actual tablets that have like drivers and everything, but it wasn't picking it up. So when I downloaded Krita and it immediately recognized the pen pressure, I was just like, yes, it works. But yeah, the pen pressure in this program works really, really well. And I'd say that the only thing in this program that really isn't like as good as I would like it to be is like the color editing. And because obviously like Photoshop does cost money and everything, so it is gonna have more features. But with the color editing in Krita, it's very limited. So I think that there's maybe like 12 types of color editing that you can do, and they're not like the same that you can't, like they're not like the same ones in Photoshop, because Photoshop has like a ton of color editing and value editing things that you can do. But it was a bit difficult for me to like work with the hue and saturation type stuff, because in Photoshop there's this one type of color editing thing that you can do called vibrance, and it helps me to get a more accurate version of like the colors that I want. But with Krita, they just sort of have like the saturation editor, which doesn't always give me like the type of colors, I guess, that I want, but I was still using it. So it's a very minor thing, but obviously it's not like a professional program or anything, so you're gonna have to take what you will with that. Yeah, I don't really know how much more that I have to say about this, but I was very, as you can probably tell, I was very pleasantly surprised with how this program works, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone who wants to just sort of like start out in digital art or digital painting or whatever, and you're looking for a program that's free. So yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Yeah. But I'll see you guys next time, I guess. So yeah, adios, my dudes.